I'm going to give you the holy grail of the Colombo War. Nobody did it this way right now.
Let's do it.
All right. So here's how it went down. Well, it started with me. Here's how it started. We were doing things in the street, and there was a kid that was killed by our social club on Bay 50th in Brooklyn, which was right next door from a bar called the Esplanade. There was these two guys that had an argument at Great Adventure Amusement Park during the day, and at night at the Esplanade, they were drinking and getting drunk. And one of the guys, his name was Frank Marassa. His nickname was Chestnut. He shot this guy Arthur in the doorway of our social club. And now Arthur's laying out, bleeding out. So I throw him in the car. I bring him to the hospital, put him on a gurney with some people by the emergency room, and I take off because I can't answer no questions. He ends up dying a few days later. Because when he died and the cops were coming around, we went to California. But before we went to California, the guy Chestnut was killed. Okay? And who did that actual shooting. So while we were in California letting this die down, we get called back by Bobby Zam about the second or third week of June of 1991. Because on June 20th, now remember the dates, June 20th, 1991, Vic Arena was driving home. And while he was driving home to his home in Long Island that night, there was a hit team on him. And it was a couple of, captains, a consigliere, a few soldiers, and a couple of associates in different cars who were on Vic Arena to kill him because he wanted to become official boss against the Persicos. While he was at a light, one of the spotters ended up being at the light near him, and he turned his head and saw who it was and immediately took off because there was no way possible at 2:00 in the morning this guy was supposed to be right next to him in the car. So he knew it was a hit. Now he takes off. He doesn't get killed. There's no shots fired. But now he knows something's wrong. They want him dead. And now that starts the beginning. That's the seedling, besides his seedling of wanting to be actual official boss. Now that is basically first strike. So he knows now he's targeted. An eternal war starts. He pulls some of his captains of who's going to be with him. And actually, Carmine Persico, he has his crew in Brooklyn, which is the Persico faction of the Colombo family, who's fighting for him. Then you had the Arena faction in the Colombo family, who's fighting for Vic Arena. So it's friends trying to kill each other now.
That's crazy.
Okay. Right. So now things are starting where there's meetings now with all the other families trying to mediate this. And they say, listen, let's have no shooting. Let's try to work this out between Carmine Persico and Vic Arena so that there's no drama in the streets with killings, because killings just bring heat and then law enforcement investigations, and there's no money being made. Well, I happen to be on the Persico side. And there was only about 30 of us versus about 80 of them. But our side, I don't want, we were taught by a person named Greg Scarpa Sr. I don't know if you ever heard of this man, but he ended up being a top echelon informant for the FBI for 30 years, since 1960. I can get into all that too. And not only was he a top echelon informant for the FBI, he was also involved in the mob. He was one of the main killers for the Colombo family. He was one of the main top earners for the Colombo family. And all along, he was living a double life that no one knew about. Okay? So he had a green light to kill. So when you're around a guy like this growing up, watching him kill people and watching how he operates, we're learning from a lunatic who has a green light. We don't have the green light. So he's breeding a bunch of lunatics. So our faction was more dominant of killers and assassins on our side than theirs. So we didn't care, we were outnumbered. You know, our guys, no matter what we were told to do, kick your door in at 3 a.m. and do what you got to do and to somebody, they'll do it. Whereas their guys, they only had a few of them guys, about 3 or 4. The rest were, you know, put in positions where they really shouldn't have been. You know, because they earn money, because they have, you know, they have qualities to be in the mob, but they don't have that street, you know, ethics of to be all around gangster, earner, a shooter, stand up. You know, they just have the earner. And a lot of guys are put in positions because they earn big money. So that was more on their side. I'm not trying to talk bad about guys, but the facts are the facts.
So there was there was credentials then, like that people would get, I guess, right?
The what?
So people would have credentials, like this guy would be known as like an earner. He would get that title, right?
Yes.
And then, like you said, shooter, I guess, if they, you know, were good with the pistol or with the gun, right?
Basically, in the mob, it's called doing a lot of work. When you do a lot of work, that means you're capable of murder and you've done it before. Okay? Okay, so it's called doing work. So our side of, you know, about 30 guys was the more dominant faction, you know, as far as people who could do work. And this thing starts breaking out. But now Greg Scarpa, he wants to start a shooting war. Unbeknownst to us, the FBI is telling him to do that. So we don't know. So we think he's just a lunatic that wants to go out with a bang because he's dying of cancer. Meanwhile, it wasn't cancer, it was AIDS. And I can get into that too. It's intricate, but I'm giving you the holy grail right now.
Yeah, so, no, sounds good. Please keep going.
Yeah, so now Greg is a lunatic. To give you a little background about him, he's been around the family, you know, 30, 40 years. He's done a lot of work for the family. I mean, he stopped counting at 50 bodies, you know, and plus he was doing work for the government in other countries, you know? Yeah, and there's a whole thing with him going down to Mississippi. If you ever saw the movie Mississippi Burning, where the 3 activists got killed by the Ku Klux Klan, and all of a sudden the National Guard found them. Well, it didn't happen like that. They sent Greg Scarpa down there to kidnap the head dragon of the Ku Klux Klan and torture him in some hut in the swamp in Mississippi to tell him where the bodies were buried.
Oh wow!
That's
so
what really happened.
He was working for not only as an informant, but he was putting in work for the government.
Yeah, he was putting in work for the government and for the family, and he would do things that other guys wouldn't want to do. Like, again, it's supposed to be no killing women or children. This man was vicious. He'd kill whoever he had to. So fast forward now to the mob, now to the war. Now Greg wants to have a shooting war. Now there's an attempt on his life. On November 18th, 1991, he's coming out of his house. His grandson and his daughter were getting into a car. There was cars, you know, backup shooters to protect him in different cars. And when they got to the corner, a box truck cut him off, and guys got out and started shooting. Now that's all that had to happen. They tried to kill Greg with his daughter and grandkid in the car. So now this guy, all he does is see red and wants to go on a killing spree now. He don't care that the other family said no shooting, no this. He wants blood. So now the shooting war starts. Now, we were in California before this happened, right before this shooting on Greg. We were in California after the Chestnut murder, hiding out there, having some fun. And we got called in after this whole thing with Vic the attempted hit on Vic Arena. So now we fly back, and our captain at the time was Bobby Zambardi, who died recently last year. And he was like, listen, this is what's going down. There's a war going to happen. You're either going to get killed, you're going to have to kill, you're going to end up in jail. Those are the three options. You can go home and not be part of it, or you can be part of it. Naturally, we're going to stay with our friends, and we're going to do what we have to do and rise through the ranks, putting our work in now in the war. So basically, it's like going to a company, say going to work for Google as some type of coder, and all of a sudden now some major thing you invent, and you have a new app that everybody's using, and they all want you, and you move up through the ranks. Well, that's what a war is to the mob. Something like that, trying to give a correlation. You follow?
Yep.
So now the war's happening. Now you know you're going to prove yourself. Everybody wants to put their balls on the line, which again, you look back at this, and I don't even know how I was involved in this insanity, but it happened. And thank God I'm still here. Don't even know how. But now we come back. Now we get involved in the war. And basically there was safe houses in Jersey, in Brooklyn, and Staten Island, and each hit team had a safe house where all we did was stay there or hide until the spotters told us where somebody is, and then we go into a stolen car that's in the garage in the house, or two garages, with two cars, or a van or something that's stolen. Go out, arm yourself, have all your weapons, bulletproof vests, masks, and go out and hunt. And this started, a shooting war in the streets of Brooklyn, in Staten Island, in Long Island, where there were so many shootouts and so many murders, and it just brought so much law enforcement to smother the 5 boroughs. Okay, so now on November 1991, this guy, Benny Alloy, he was a top guy on the Arena side. He ends up escaping. Shots are fired. He don't die. He gets away. Now that's the Arena faction that the Percival faction tried to get. Now, since we tried to get him, the Arena faction now goes and hunts one of our guys down in Sheepshead Bay. His name was Hank Smura. They call him Hank the Bank. He was a big, big guy. All he would do was eat and fall asleep right in front of you. You go to dinner, he'd eat his pasta, he'd eat a couple of things of mozzarella, and all of a sudden he'd be like this. Sleeping.
That's hilarious.
Until it was time to have coffee. Then have the coffee, go right back. So now, and unfortunately, that's how he died. And I'll tell you how. He was in Sheepshead Bay. He must have been eating something in his car, parked. He ate it, and all of a sudden, boom, he fell asleep. And that's how they found him in his car, shot in the head. So they snuck up on him. He didn't see it coming. So he was basically one of the lucky ones that just went to sleep and never woke up. And now he was on our side. So now they got one of our guys. So now they try to make a presence. Now, in November 28th, 1991, there was an attempt on 2 of our guys who happened to be getting a haircut. And they were in a place called Bruno's on 28th Avenue, right off of 86th Street in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Now, one of the guys getting a haircut was Larry Sessa. His nickname was Fat Larry because he was a big guy. And there was another guy of ours outside in the car with guns, waiting to make sure nobody goes into the haircut place for Larry, named Ronnie Cordler. When Fat Larry came out, there was Arena faction guys across the street. As soon as he got in the car, they start shooting the car up. So Ronnie ducks. Fat Larry was shooting back. They're both ducked. He hits the gas with his hand and drives away trying to look at the power lines to see where to go. And he ends up running over 4 people. And then realizes he's missing a finger. His finger got shot off.
Oh, wow.
But we found the finger. You know where it was? It was wedged in the dashboard and the windshield. You know where the inspection sticker would go?
Yeah.
Like wedged all the way in there. I had to get a pencil to pull it out.
Oh my gosh.
Put it on ice, send him to the hospital. Okay, so now the Arena faction did a hit, killed one of our guys, Hank, tried to kill Larry and Ronnie. Now we're all fired up. Now it's Greg just wants blood. He wants bodies. He don't care who on that side. If they owned a dog and it was one of theirs, he'd kill the dog too. That's how he was. So now,
Frankie, sorry, I just want to ask. I want to pause real quick. It sounds like a war is literally happening. Like it's an actual war zone.
Yeah.
What was going on in your head at this time?
No one ever did this. So what I'm telling you now, no one ever did this on a podcast or anywhere.
No, this is a Millennial's Choice exclusive right
100%.
here.
Yes,
like
this is
the Colombo Wars. We're learning details about the Colombo War, and we haven't heard this. So yeah.
Like what was going on in your head at that time? What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking that we have to kill everybody. I was on a crazy mode.
For real.
Know? And
it's kill or be killed at this point.
It was. And you with a lunatic who just loves killing, and you're all fired up. You think you're doing you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's how you're brainwashed at this point. Basically, it's like you don't care about nothing else except this war, getting through it, and just getting your enemy before they get you. Because it's different. This is a war where it's friends killing friends. So I know all their bad habits. They all know our bad habits. They know our routine. So it's different. It's not like getting in the car, going to kill somebody and coming back out and driving away. This is where they know everybody. You're known. They know every move you make. So it was a little, crazy at times. And again, you're in this situation and you don't realize till later on, what was I thinking? So now after Ronnie gets shot, his finger gets shot off and Larry gets shot at, there's another old timer named Black Sam on December 5th, 1991. This old timer named Black Sam Nastasi. And he was like 80 something years old or close to knocking on 90's door. He was like really old. He was playing cards in the club. He was really just like, shouldn't have been killed, but he was on our side, but he wasn't active. He just, Carmine was the boss. He's the boss. That's how it's going to be. And he would stay in his club and play cards. He didn't think he was going to be a target. The Arena faction went in there, shooting. They end up shooting the bartender lady, in her breast, and they killed Black Sam. Now they kill another one of our guys, Black Sam, even though he wasn't, active. So now this is December 5th, 91. Now Greg wants, blood. So now in between these actual murders, there's attempted murders taking place all in between of this, of shootouts that nobody even reported, going back and forth with everybody. So now on, there's a crew hunting around one day, and it's December 8th, 1991. There's an Arena guy named Vinny Busaro. His nickname was Vinny Venus because he was had something to do with the Venus Diner. So Vinny Venus was hanging his Christmas lights outside his house. And on the ladder, while he was on the ladder, Greg stopped the car, and Greg loved to use a thing called a rifle called an M1. And there's some history with the M1. He just never threw it away. He just would make a little notch in it and continue using it. Meanwhile, he's supposed to throw the gun away, He never did. He never did. And that was a sign when I noticed it a few weeks later on something I did with him because I thought he threw it out. So Vinny Vasaro, he's hanging his Christmas lights, and Greg shoots him from the car, right off the ladder. So now an arena faction guy is taken down. And a few days later, there's another arena faction who's the son of Luis Bobo Malpizzo, who a guy that I tried to kill. I'll get into that afterwards. And his son was coming out of his house, and Persico guys, our team, shot at him. He got hit in the chest. He didn't die. So 2 arena faction guys got hit. And the next day, the arena faction now sends 2 idiots from their crew to kill somebody in our crew who has a bagel store in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Now, the victim, who was an innocent victim who worked at the store, was killed by these 2 idiots. It was a father and son. And yeah, and basically, it was the son was called Chris Liberatore, and the father was something Liberatore. I never met them because they were 2 idiots, but they were going around, shooting people, thinking it was okay, and they went and killed an innocent worker at one of our guys' establishments, was a bagel store, looking for a guy, Frank Guerrero. His name is BF, and BF owned the store. So when they went in there, the kid told him he's not here, and the kid Chris ended up shooting this kid for no reason. That was the beginning of the end.